You all know the story of Annabelle, right? The Raggedy Ann that didn't behave as a doll should and looked suspiciously different in her movie as opposed to her real life counterpart. Since she's become somewhat of a cultural sensation, it's easy to forget that she was based on something real. A particularly uncomfortable truth for me. When I was a baby, a relative of mine made me and each of my siblings a Raggedy Ann and Andy set. As anyone who has dabbled in sewing and craft making knows, that is a very time-consuming and heartfelt gesture, especially since care was taken to make sure every set looked different so we wouldn't confuse which ones belonged to whom. I loved my Raggedy Ann and Andy that were made just for me. They were eventually put up on a small shelf so they wouldn't get muddy or their clothes get torn. Although I was always careful with my toys, extra care was taken with them since they were handmade. This is where the story takes a bit of a turn, because I had to walk past that shelf every time I had to use the bathroom or wanted a midnight snack, which wasn't so bad until nightfall. The house would get quite dark at night, but I had lived there for quite a number of years and could find my way around in the dark. Every time I walked past those dolls, something just felt off. I don't know how to describe it other than when you're alone, but you don't feel alone. You feel like you're being watched. What was odd was that I didn't just feel it from the two of them collectively. I only felt it from Andy. Not Anne. Just Andy. A few weeks passed. One night on my way back from the bathroom, I found Andy lying on the floor under a shelf. I figured he had probably fallen, as toys tend to do, and placed him back up next to Anne. This became a repeated occurrence. I would return from the bathroom to find him on the floor again. I noticed that I never found him in that position except at night, when he was then blocking my path back to my room. After a few days of this, I walked just a few steps past Andy on my nightly crusade when I heard a thunk. I turned around to find Andy. There again. Only this time, he was sitting up and looking right at me. Needless to say, my GBs had officially been heebied, and I ran the rest of the way to the bathroom, half expecting him to follow me. The problem was when I still needed to walk back to my bed, past him. Because it hadn't been hard to put two and two together to decipher that Andy had tried to fall on me. And that's probably what he had been doing that whole time. But it just so happened that that was the closest he had ever gotten to accomplishing his goal so far. I took a peek around the corner, and he was still there, sitting up. This time I wasn't taking any chances. I was done being the nice guy. I took a running start, jumped as high as I could right over him, and sprinted all the way back to my room before slamming the door behind me. I was not going to get taken out by a doll in the middle of the night, so I devised a plan. If he was determined to play this stupid little game every night with me, then I was just going to have to get better at it than he was. So, admittedly, after a few nights of cowering in my room in fear, I returned braver than ever. I ran past Andy, and even though I heard the familiar thunk right behind me, I kept going until I made it to the bathroom. Aha! I had foiled his plan yet again. I never did return to putting him back on the shelf. Not in the cold dark of darkness, at least. I wasn't that dumb. But I did keep up my routine of running past him both ways, though, until one day. He didn't miss. He landed right on me. It was all I could do not to scream bloody murder and run right out the door and down the road Looney Tunes style. In reality, I did scream, but it was more like when you find a spider crawling on you that you didn't expect to be there. And I did run, but it was to the bathroom to hide. I hid in that bathroom for hours thinking of what on earth I could do now. And honestly, I couldn't come up with anything other than what I had been doing. Keep running and hope for the best. I ended up talking with my mom about how mean Andy was being to me, and she kindly moved him up to a higher, larger shelf. She reassured me that it was probably just the wind, and I was making when I would walk or run past him that was making him fall. This new shelf dwarfed me in height, and there was no way that any wind could affect him all the way up there, and he would never bother me again. He couldn't possibly fall off of this one, right? Right? But he did. Every night, for quite a while, actually. Every night he would attack me and scare the living daylights out of me. One day I couldn't take it anymore and had both of them moved downstairs. It didn't help our basement be any less creepy for young me, but at least it helps my everyday sanity. He doesn't follow me anymore. He doesn't watch me out of the corner of my eye. He sits in the basement, waiting. And I still, to this day, have no idea how or why any of it happened. Even the wind theory doesn't make any sense. At the start, before I started running, I didn't walk any faster past him in the day versus at night. But he would only fall at night, and apparently only around me. Not around my siblings or obviously taller parents. Just me. And it would have made more sense if he had come from a thrift store and been of unknown origins. But being that he was made for me by someone I know and was the only one out of all the ones they made that did that, it was so odd. I don't know. I really don't. All I know is that I'm afraid of dolls now, and I have this scary story to tell. Well, I don't know if it's scary to anyone besides me. Maybe it's not. And maybe, just maybe, you'll think of this story the next time you hear a thunk in the night. I hope you enjoyed this Storytime animation. I know that my voice isn't exactly the best right now. I've been sick for about a week, but I'm recovering, slowly starting to feel better. Thank you so much for listening. I'm wanting to pivot my channel to this kind of content instead of the jewelry making that I was doing before. I very much enjoy this. I find it very interesting and I have a lot of fun with it. So, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I do, and I hope to see you again soon. You're a gem. Bye!